My name is Charles Irizarry. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called Brim & Company. We're an applied AI consultancy and venture studio. We work with large enterprises implementing unique solutions, typically around reinforcement learning, and then we see if we can spin out those solutions as their own companies. And so I'm excited to be talking to these brilliant people here, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Antonio to start us off with the introductions of the panel.
Thank you. My name is Antonio Ponte. I'm Deposit Product Manager for North America in Citibank. And aside my day-to-day job, I'm passionate and I support the adoption of emerging technologies in Citi. I have worked in adoption of electronic signatures, blockchains, and now artificial intelligence. I have several projects related to artificial intelligence. And now I'm working with my innovation lab on supporting the adoption in our products and in the day-to-day productivity of generative AI.
Thank you. Hi, Jennetta George. I am currently the SVP of AI for a consulting firm called AlixPartners. Joined really recently. For the past few years, though, I was at Slalom. And I'm also a founder and leader of my AI advisory firm called Artificially Intelligent. So my passion really is in advising, whether it's senior executives at Fortune 100 companies to startup founders that are pre-seed and in idea stage, and just advising on how to leverage AI and how to really think about data in smart ways that will help fuel predictive analytics in the future.
Hi, everyone. My name's Alex Levinson. I'm a principal algorithms engineer at Elbit Systems of America. My specialty is in computer vision and tracking systems, and I have a background at various defense contractors and kind of implementing AI and kind of cutting edge machine learning methods to accelerate our abilities. And yeah, happy to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dmitry. I work in strategy analytics at LinkedIn. And primarily, I think about how to develop and improve the premium subscription, but also use generative AI products at LinkedIn and how to implement them profitably. Great to be here. Hope everyone have enough energy for the talk.
Awesome. Thank you, panel. I think everyone has energy. They ate. I think they drank caffeine at least. I'm at my 4th cup of caffeine, so I think everyone's excited. So in no particular order, I'm going to be firing off some questions individually to you guys, and then towards the end, I'll be a little bit more general so that we can have a conversation. Please, if anyone's interested in asking questions, get that ready, because towards the end of the panel, I'm going to ask the crowd to go ahead and ask some questions. So with that said, and if you were at DSS last year, Alexandra actually had a fantastic presentation on computer vision. I believe it's still posted on the website, so if you have a chance, go to the Data Science Salon website and look it up. It was fantastic. And this question's for you. How have recent advances in AI algorithms impacted the defense and aerospace sectors, and what unique challenges do these sectors face in adopting these technologies?
So there are a lot of ways that more recently we in the defense industry have started using AI and machine learning algorithms. So we rely on the consumer sector a lot to kind of lead that effort. So it is a little bit slower in defense, but we're using AI now across the board. I use it very heavily in object detection and classification. We have computer vision systems, but in the future, I think, especially with generative AI, what we want to work towards is being able to kind of write requirements on a document and be able to use that as an input to some kind of generative AI model, and that would be able to form an end-to-end system for us. There are some challenges with doing that. So in defense, our data is we have a lot of emphasis on data privacy, as you can imagine. Our data is siloed a lot of the time, so even when it's unclassified, we can't necessarily use it between programs. So it does make it harder to kind of deploy these systems, especially in a general way. But I think with the advances in explainability and a trustworthy AI, we can get more of like corporate buy-off necessary to do those types of activities.
And I imagine the process of getting corporate buy-in has gotten easier and easier over the last year or so with the popularity of generative AI and the conversations.
Yeah. I mean, again, so the consumer sector really does lead the efforts in this. So people are now more like warming up to it more and more. But it does take, so for us, non-deterministic processing overall is unacceptable. We need to really explicitly know what these systems are going to be doing because it's safety critical and mission critical. So yeah, we are still waiting on some advances in explainability to be able to do that.
Excellent. And panel, feel free to jump in as well. Although the questions are directed, we love the conversation. The next question is directed towards Jennetta and your advisory role. What are the top challenges companies face when trying to integrate AI solutions into their core business strategies? And what have you experienced?
I think that, Alex, you kind of hit on it with the non-deterministic and really just what we were just talking about with explainability. And so from that angle, I work with a few companies right now where privacy is like utmost important. And even at AlixPartners, we have really, really strict guidelines around legal compliance where, just to give an example, I was setting up generative AI to use for marketing. And so we were collecting all of this data for our clients that we would then use to just really simply help our customers cut down on the number of hours that they're using generating content for marketing. And so one easy way to get data instead of waiting for the customers to give it to you and also to know that it's publicly facing, we were trying to scrape that data off of Instagram and just kind of bypass going through the marketing teams. And our legal team was like, no, we can't do that for so many number of reasons. So just really making sure that you're collecting the data in proper ways, that you're building analytical systems around the generative systems, which again, I think you were alluding to this as well, right? So that's where you can start building explainability and transparency in, and we know that the generative systems themselves, it's truly the most black box it could be right now, as the technology stands right now. But if we want to start building an analytical pipeline where we can really start to see what we're passing into the generative AI, that goes a long way in just starting the process.
Awesome. And so this is actually perfectly working out in theme because now I'm going down the line to ask you, Antonio, next. I have two questions for you. One's going to be talking a little bit about data privacy, and then I have a fun one afterwards. But with increasing concerns about data privacy, how is Citi ensuring that AI-driven processes are transparent, secure for its customers?
Super good question. Just full disclaimer, I'm product manager, and I see this from business perspective, okay? I have 3 data scientists that are going to keep me honest, okay? So, but basically, as Jennetta was saying, what is happening today with LLMs is that kind of block boxes, okay? You ask a questions, okay? And because they are generative, it's probabilistic, you might not have the same answer always. But there is another technique, okay? That is RAG, that is retrieval augmented generation, that is basically, and first of all, LLMs are spectacular knowledge integrators. And using this technique, okay, basically what you do is you are going to use the LLM to understand the intention and to understand what the person wants to ask, the information they need. So through this, it's going to look the information through a repository of information that has been priorly managed to create a vector databases. I don't want to get too much into detail, okay? But that is going to give you the exact information that you need, because you are not going to use the information of the model, okay? But because you cannot segment it, you are going to use the information that is embedded in the repository, okay? So that is how you are going to first ensure accuracy. And second, because all of this is inside our premises in or hosts in our machines, they are kept inside the organization, okay? And because this storage of information, you can classify it, okay? So some people, some users will not have access to certain parts of this data storage, and other people do. In this way, because we keep all the information, or everything in our infrastructure, and we segment this, okay? So that's the way we ensure data privacy and accuracy. I don't know if that...
Oh, that's great.
I want to add, it's a great point, and one of the interesting way how you can improve explainability of the AI is to actually limit the number of outputs that it can produce. I think you talked about one, like use internal data and then don't expose to external users. It's not only about chat experience and generating whatever you want. You can also go further. For example, you can do AI search. And you can tell the model that your output will be a number of search filters. That's your language now. Instead of talking in English, you're going to talk to me in a number of like search filters that I'm going to apply and I'm going to show to the end user. And this way you can like limit the error space if you want, and it's much easier to control.
I think that's a great point, and I would love for you to continue expanding on that, because my next follow-up question, which was with all these companies and the vast amount of data that they have, Dmitry, in your experience, how would you recommend to think of user data with generative AI?
Yeah, great point. So when you think about user data, I would actually distinguish this into two stages. One at the point of training the model, and another one at the inference time. Inference is when you actually write the request at the very moment of generation, right? And I would say the easiest one to get right is the inference time user data. So for example, if you have a product experience and your user knows something about themselves, they want to generate message to send to somebody, the system, the ChatGPT or like whatever model you're using, should know all of that public information as well. That is a use of public data, but it doesn't, if you build your model right, it doesn't even leave the premise. And nobody in your company also sees this data, right? Like the data privacy is extremely important topic, especially for the large companies. I would say that training the model with the user data is much more tricky and not always actually advisable, because not all of the time user-generated data is of the high quality. Sometimes you don't know what high quality is. Sometimes it's maybe even better to use pre-generated data, some artificial data, right? But I strongly believe that use of data at the inference time is gonna distinguish a lot of great products from some of the more generic products. Yeah, it should be much better than ChatGPT because of this.
It has more context with it. Awesome. And then what I want to do is circle back to Antonio and then work my way back through the panel. And this is more of a fun question, but in general, especially with your product management experience, in the banking industry, what are some unexpected ways AI is being utilized beyond fraud detection and robo-advisors? Have you seen any interesting use cases?
Well, we already use artificial intelligence to try to detect anomalies in payments, try to detect frauds. Okay, this is something that we are already do. Generative AI can increase the efficiency and the accuracy in some of these processes. For example, LLMs, okay, where you basically do AML, sorry. For example, when you have a hit with a name of a person, you can see the context automatically using generative AI, and because it's a great knowledge integrator, you can pull on the information and try to generate a better scoring, okay, to see if that is a way, I haven't implemented yet, but that's a way that you can use for AML, okay, and there are others, okay. Basically, one of the great generative AI, what it's going to do is to bring us a massive improvement of productivity in almost in many roles. Okay, and that is we are just scratching the surface of the potential.
For sure. Thank you. For Jennetta, how does artificial intelligent AlixPartners approach ensuring ethical and responsible AI implementations?
Yeah, so I touched on this in my last response. So something to add, I guess, that I hadn't said previously. There's a lot of work that we can do as companies, regardless of size, because when we think about building out our teams, obviously there are a lot of factors, and a lot of times budget just being one of them. We can only afford to hire on so many people, but hiring people who are more than just a data scientist, who can have not only the ability but also the time, because it takes time really to stay on top of all of the trends that are happening, whether it's GPT, LangChain, like all of these different tools and technologies that are coming into the ecosystem. There are ethical implications for all of them, so we need to make sure that we're really staying on the ball with them. Also, just having like a really smart technical lead, someone who is making sure that we are not only building the solution, but also building the whole moat around the solution that's going to account for the ethics. So it takes a village, not just a single data scientist, is really the moral there.
Awesome, and I hope these questions are triggering thoughts and ideas and questions from the crowd, because we're going to be switching gears shortly to have you guys ask questions. One final question for Alexandra, and then I'm going to have some questions for the group. And this is mainly I'm going to improvise on this question because I'm selfishly interested in computer vision. With your work in computer vision and your experience, how has, and if it has, generative AI helped you in your work in progressing the performance of your models or any of the work that you do around it?
So, in industry in general, I'll tell you what I've been exposed to. So, we in the defense industry are data starved a lot of the time. We have these very specified sensors that are very expensive, and it's cost a lot, and it's time consuming to get the right data to train our regular AI, like computer vision algorithms. So where generative AI can be really, really useful is in being able to create these scenarios and these data sets and augment our real data with simulation data, which we're already doing, but the amount of time saved and just to be able to create a data set that's specifically for this application with the annotations already in it, it's huge. Also, generative AI is used now for image restoration. So, for example, we use IR data a lot. There's a lot of pre-processing that needs to go into that before it can be fed to like a detection algorithm or something like that. So generative AI really could be used to get that data in a useful state. But also, I mean, just as far as like a stretch goal, not just with computer vision, but in defense, generative AI can be used for potentially for things like Siri, the equivalent of Siri for for example, for a helicopter pilot or something like that. And these can be life-saving technologies if it can help you. You already need a co-pilot, but to have an additional AI-powered co-pilot helping you land safely and avoid obstacles and things like that. There are a lot of different applications.
Awesome, thank you. The following questions are going to be for anybody, so please feel free to jump in and answer the question. And I think our band picture is finally up. This is actually something that happens to me a lot running an AI consultancy. You get calls from executives saying, I want AI, I want AI. Typically, I push back and say, can you even spell it? Do you even know what you're asking for? So out of curiosity, what is the one AI myth or misconception you believe enterprises should debunk immediately? I'll give you a few minutes to think about that one.
Well, in my perspective, generative AI is something that is not new. The vendors have been working on this preparing for this for a long time. people have some expectation that working with this is going to be expensive. Okay, I don't think that is the case. Okay, you basically can download the a model. You can go to a cloud server, take a model, and basically start playing with that in a free tier. Okay, so start working with generative AI, the models, is relatively cheap. Okay, what is going to be expensive is moving to the next level, is to have the talent, to have the data. It's basically all the product that comes after that makes that project expensive depending of the use case. Okay, but I don't think that cost is a reason to do not explore generative AI today.
I can add to that part of what comes next after building the model. And I see this in companies, like I said, from like startup to like Apple and Google are all, it really depends on the team. But this notion of, it's not going to take that much to manage in production, or really understanding what it even means to manage a model in production. Especially when we think about generative AI and all of the different things that we want to build in for building in transparency and explainability, because we haven't been thinking about that over like the past maybe 5 years ago. We weren't trying to build in explainability into our production pipeline, and so now we're seeing a lot of companies popping up that are offering that kind of explainability in like an auto ML tool, but there's still, we haven't perfected it yet. So there are not perfect products out there for managing that pipeline, which means that, again, we need to be hiring the right people, the right ML ops engineers, and just the right, beyond just the data science team, the DevOps team, the whole gambit, to make sure that we're building something that's going to stay robust and scale, and really be thinking about the behind the scenes, and because it is more than just data. People get really excited when they see, I have the data, I have enough data, I have clean data. Okay, great start. And then I have the model, I've trained the model, I've done, okay, another really great start. And you've just completed 10% of the process for the next 5 years.
So shifting gears a bit, what I hear a lot is that Gen AI is going to take people's jobs. I think that's a huge misconception. I mean, there's an element where, the introduction of every technology, there's going to be new skills that you have to learn and keep up. But generative AI has a huge potential to democratize learning even further, actually. So just like GitHub Copilot, if anyone's used that, like we use Kalman filters. It's a pretty complex algorithm, and using that, I was able to code one in, I think, under a minute it was. So, I mean, I think that there is huge potential for people, especially people who don't necessarily have the strongest background in coding, to be able to use this technology to kind of catch up and stay on the cutting edge.
Going on this tangent, by the way, I strongly believe that one thing is going to be important in the near future is the art of asking the right questions. Like, you can ask this question to this amazing oracle, but you need to know what's the right question to ask. And I think that's what future jobs will focus more, rather than just, like giving the answers. Coming back slightly to some of the misconception, I actually want to challenge a little bit, the idea of costs. Like, I actually think that it's very important to think about costs very early on. These models tend to be extremely expensive. And if you don't think about the costs, then you might encounter the roadblock pretty quickly when you try to scale, and then the project will not go anywhere. If you think about these things in advance, you can build a scalable solution that will actually be like a very good cycle. You're going to get more users, you're going to get more profit, you're going to get more resources. It's going to be much easier to develop the product if you think about these things in advance.
Kind of marrying your two ideas together. I remember early on I saw a meme that said something like product manager, or ChatGPT can't take away all the jobs because that would mean product managers need to know how to define all the requirements properly. So there, I mean, it's true though, right? Because we do have this huge workforce that already works in tech that they're going to need a little bit of upskilling for ChatGPT, for generative AI, and then we've just opened up a whole new industry on upskilling on AI. So we're adding jobs and enhancing jobs simultaneously.
Awesome. That was very well articulated by everyone. If I could summarize the two major points there, because I'm in violent agreement, this is actually something that I cover. One is that it's not AI replacing us, it's augmented us. So it's augmented intelligence is how we refer to it. And also when you do a proof of concept, that can be mistaken as a clear view of what the future can look like, which that means then you can mistake that distance. So typically what we've seen is that when we do a proof of concept that's successful, that triggers a digital transformation strategy within the enterprise, which can be a very multi-year expensive endeavor. Jennetta, to your point, and you kind of teed up my next question perfectly, as AI becomes more integrated into everyday business, what skills do you think will become indispensable for the next generation of professionals?
Yeah, I think I just answered it, right? And I'm actually, I work with this cohort of AI startup founders called AI Forge. And one of the companies in it, this is exactly what they are doing. They're a whole company just based on, building the next generation and really focusing on high school going into college for what skills do they need for specifically generative AI and ethical AI. So really just, focusing on wherever you're at, whatever stage of your career you are, there are just so many resources out there already. So just start educating yourself on it.
Yes, I totally agree. I agree with you that we underestimate the cost, okay, to manage an end-to-end product, okay, but starting with AI could be cheap. The problem is that the talent that you need to manage that AI could be very costly. And that's bring an additional point to your point is that how we need to reskill ourselves. Actually, one of the points that we see is that AI is going to basically impact almost every role in the organization. So in many ways, we are going to need to relearn to do our jobs using AI. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. But eventually, AI is going to be embedded in the majority of the things that we do in the day-to-day. So it's basically, we need to learn to relearn what we do.
Yeah, I think, so reiterating on some of these points, I mean, it is really important to be resourceful and, stay up to date and all of that. I think another important point that Jennetta made was DevOps. So I think a good DevOps person can really be the difference between being able to, do something and not. But specifically in computer vision, I think it's also useful to have a pretty solid grasp on the more classical methods. So kind of understand what image processing is, the science behind it a little bit, so you're able to go and then use all the tools at your disposal. Another big one is just if you don't know Python, that's pretty important for any AI field. So, yeah.
Awesome. And then I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up to the crowd. And so I warn you, this might be a little bit loaded. Just your opinion and perspective on this. In terms of regulations, and in your experience and opinion, what's the next frontier for AI, and how can businesses best prepare for it?
Show of hands, who's seen Coded Bias on Netflix? Probably. Okay, a few hands on this side, no hands on this side. If you haven't seen it, go out and watch it. Like I said, it's on Netflix. At Slalom, actually, when I was working there, we interviewed the producer, Shalini Kantaya, I believe is her name, and it's a really, really great documentary that really explores all different types of AI, how it is affecting society in really severe ethical ways. I think that one of the use cases that they talked about was in China, I forget what the social credit system. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with that, how we're using AI and kind of scoring. And anyway, long tangent, but moral of the story is just really making sure that you're watching these kinds of documentaries and educating yourself and really like understanding not only the technology, because we're up here talking about ways to use computer vision and ways to like implement different algorithms, but then really understanding how that affects the broad array of different people, minorities, different countries, different cultures, and kind of questioning yourself of like, how would I fix this problem? AI is having this as an output. I didn't expect this to be an output. Now, how can I, whether I'm working in the field of AI or not, how can I have some impact to making it a better world with AI?
Well, working in a heavily regulated industry, even if with AI or not AI, we still need to comply with the regulations, okay? So what I see is that there are so many different things that are going to start to happening, as Jennetta say, that even, for example, deepfake, that now you can basically almost steal the identity or replicate the identity of another person, or processes need to be adapted or that, and something that we are doing already. However, at some point we expect regulators to help on that, okay? And not on that, only on that, but in other challenges. But I think that it's still early on to see but people are still understanding the problem. Okay, so it's going to take, I think, sometimes for regulators to regulate on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely still quite the quagmire that our leaders are going to have to navigate. One of the big things about this latest iteration of AI is when in the previous AI winters that we had, the last two of them, the focus of AI was automation of robotics, so industrial automation. People didn't realize that the AI that actually came to mainstream was going to automate intellectual work or augmented white-collar work. And so there's a lot of understanding from that perspective. And then how does this go and how can it be used maliciously and how can you protect against that? So that's an interesting problem that I'm happy I'm not solving. So with that said, I wanted to open it up to the crowd if anyone had any questions. This is a rare moment where you have 4 professionals like this available to answer any questions, any thoughts, any ideas, especially in the thematic of demystifying AI. I'm going to walk over because I'm just going to improvise in real time and hand over the mic. I'm blind now from the projector.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for sharing your insights and experiences today here. I think my question probably ties to, Dimitri, you were talking about costs. As we think about the enterprise, traditionally we've measured things in terms of like ROI, time to pay back, diminishing returns, and even like running expensive queries. So I'm wondering, as we talk about the enterprise, Gen AI and ML, are those same sorts of measurements still the theme, or have they evolved into other operational cost measurements?
Sorry, repeat the last part. What sort of?
So we're still talking the same sort of performance measurements in terms of ROI, payback, and so on, or are there other conversations around measurement and cost happening as you're in the room with stakeholders?
Yeah, I'm going to have a actual talk about this, how to manage costs and develop it profitably. But I would say that you need to get everyone in the room at the same time, because they're sort of like constraints, I believe, more expensive than GPT 3.5. And when, for example, engineers want to develop certain systems and want to use the state of the art, when business people get in the room, they want to use the cheapest one. And so I would say it's not about the set of individual metrics, but rather integrating the whole process together and orchestrating in a way that you have, like think about the technical challenge, but also think about the long-term business viability of a product, and also like the safety and all those like things should be integrated, right? Like product, engineering, and also subject matters experts, those people who can evaluate the output of generative AI. Yeah, this can help.
Hey everyone, thank you for your information. I feel that Gen AI has very obvious applications in many industries, right? It's like marketing is an obvious application, but there are also companies trying to explore what they could apply Gen AI to, right? Like they are trying to brainstorm, they're trying to see what's the best fit. Based on your experience, do you have any flows that you would go with a customer, for example, that comes to you, hey, how can I apply AI? Do you have any suggestions on how to explore what you have, right? Maybe the data sets or the kind of company you are or your industry, and go from there?
Yeah, so I like to always start off in a more general field of AI, so meaning more operational, more like marketing, things that any company would need outside of or irrespective to their industry. And when I start there, I often start with things that are really good use cases typically fall in terms of categorization or obviously content creation, or things that can be very generalizable. So for example, if you can take small amounts of data from your company and feed that to the system, excuse me, sorry, feed that to the system and say, categorize, classify, and that can be used in so many different use cases. That's the system that we work in right now, where we don't have these customized knowledge bases, but we know that those technologies are being developed now, whether it's going to be a company like GPT that comes out and allows us to put in bigger vector databases or other data that is customizable. Once we're able to do that and not give that data away to a third party, or build it in-house and not give it away to a third party, then it truly does become the sky is the limit. But right now we really are pigeonholed into these use cases that we need to be able to use generalized data, and we need to not necessarily rely on really specific trend analysis that we wouldn't be able to go back and kind of trace the history of seeing why are they getting to that. So yeah, in general, things that can be put in buckets and automated in that way. So an example of that would be, I think that you actually mentioned documenting or building out requirements. That's another really good one. If you can feed it a few different documents and say, learn from this and now do this, just something outside of the categorization method. Does anyone want to add to that?
AI can, in general, generative AI specifically can do two things very well. It can make something much faster, and it can make something much cheaper. And but it only matters if the process that you automating already exists. So I would say ideally what you want to do is not to invent something new and crazy around experiences and how people can interact differently, but rather start with all of the tasks that you users do today, so all jobs to be done, and then think how generative AI can make any particular job faster or much cheaper if right now it's expensive.
Hi, yeah, I had one question. What are you using specifically for ML ops? And what recommendations and best practices do you have for people in terms of putting in place infrastructure to support, continuous innovation and development of your machine learning models?
Is it to me specifically?
Starting with you, yeah.
So I will not be able to comment specifically on LinkedIn. I'm here not as representative of the company, but rather sharing my personal experience. I would say this is evolving space. Yeah, I don't think I would be able to give specific recommendations.
I can take this one because I've worked with several dozen companies where this is what sorry, this is really loud. Where that's what I come in and do, is help them figure out what their ML ops solution should be, and anywhere from a purely bootstrapped, built, like literally glued together a whole bunch of things on AWS or Azure to make it work, versus something like more of an AutoML tool like Dataiku is one that I really, really love. And the more I've been doing this, the more I've come to the conclusion that tools like Dataiku, I don't know if any of you guys have used that before, are actually really nice, and if you have a good data science team, they still can do a lot of customization. A lot of times we feel like we're being pigeonholed again by like not being able to have like a SageMaker notebook where I can literally do anything I want. That takes a lot of steps and a lot of time to set up all of the infrastructure that would go around it. A company like Dataiku, it's very visual. You kind of have everything in one place. And you can still have notebooks where you're customizing all of your different models. So I would suggest, especially if you have a newer team, if you have a very, very mature team, just doing something that you're building bespoke should work fine. But if you're a newer team and you just want something that's gonna work, look into something like Dataiku. This is not a sponsorship.
No, I love this answer. I want to give you an addition. I know that your question was from technology architecture. I want to be a business perspective. In addition to that, as a business, our expectation is we need to continuously evaluate and audit the model. Okay, this is crucial because we want to ensure that, remember the LLMs are generative, we not necessarily can predict what is going to be the outcome. Okay, so we need to have continuous evaluation and auditing to ensure that they are continuously doing what we expect them to do. Second, that they don't have biases or they are complying with the regulations, and also, of course, continue improving them. Okay, so this is critical. The continuous evaluations and auditing of the models, okay, because of their nature. This is, it's kind of a safety check for the business. That's it's very critical for us.
And a lot of those companies like AWS, again, not a sponsorship, it's just AWS is the company I use most frequently. They are so on the cutting edge with things like explainability. They have a whole responsibly applied AI framework and custom built solutions that you can integrate into your MLOps. So as long as you've got someone that knows how to write a little bit of infrastructure as code, you can get that set up for relatively cheap and relatively fast.
I would also add to the business side of things. When you think about MLOps, yes, continuous evaluation is extremely important, and sometimes you will probably expect that you can change your model either to a cheaper one or to a better one in the future. This might require change of prompts. Not all of them will work out of the box, and they will require this evaluation. Some of this you can automate, but you will also need subject matter experts. And it's interesting part of AI development that actually sometimes you need a lot of people who are going to annotate and say what's good, what's not. Of course, it varies by the use case. But I would think about this like all together as a package rather than like a standalone technical problem.
Fantastic, guys. Thank you. You guys were an awesome panel. Thank you for the time today. Please, everyone, give it up for this team. To everyone in the crowd, take advantage. They're going to be here today. Hopefully, they're going to be with us also at the happy hour later tonight, and you guys can ask them questions directly. Thank you again, everyone. Awesome.